In the early 2000s, I was very enamored with getting a good old Brooklyn Dodgers cap, just something that looked like it walked off the playing field in the 1920s or 30s. A New Era came out with a collection called the Cooperstown Collection, early 2000s, and very nice, very heavy. They did it out of Melton wool. This was old one. It's got some nice creature tracks on it from eating it a bit. The crown's kind of cut in a way where it's very boxy in some respect. But I loved the fact, and I had a Brooklyn Dodgers one. This is the one that's left out of 3 I had. But I like the fact that it just looked like a vintage baseball cap, low profile, and the bill, it wasn't the wider one that New Era uses. It was just very nice, but it's a bit squarer than what you'd see in the 1920s and 30s and 40s. They recently put out a new collection called 1920. The numbers 1 and 9 and the letters TWENTY to follow them, which is this verbatim in a way, same exact cap, yet they did it with a leather sweatband, which was beautiful. I hope to get a Cardinals one because they look like it looks like a vintage cap. Only fallback to me is that it has this again. It's a squared off bill, whereas ones from back in the day, they're a little bit more rounder. If you look at the photographs from back then, they swoop. So the person turns to the side and they swoop. The earliest ones of the Cooperstown cap collection have the stitch on the edge to keep it from rolling under. The new ones in the 1920 collection that were made in 2014, and I missed getting them back then because I didn't know they were around. They don't have that stitching. But they look fantastic. Japan, they released several that have 8 panels rather than 6, which I'm jealous. I want to get one of those. Something, though, that I wanted to point out was Brooklyn Dodgers. I'm a big fan of the Brooklyn Dodgers. I haven't really found a cap outside of something made by the Cooperstown Ball Cap Company and Mitchell & Ness, which both of them, they stopped making them, but they made a proper Brooklyn Dodgers ball cap back in the early 2000s, late 90s, that had a B that was like this. It's a figure 8. And through Dodgers history, they've had many different Bs, but the one that New Era originally put out was later in the career of the Dodgers, has kind of this half moon cut to it. And looking through the history of the B and New Era, it's very much the B that you saw from the Bakersfield Dodgers before the Brooklyn Dodgers moved to California. And then when New Era decided to do throwback issues of Brooklyn Dodgers caps, they went with this B, which again, the Dodgers had used this B a couple times close to it, but this is very much the exact B that was used for Bakersfield. What I like about this cap is it's a classic New Era 5950, which introduced 1954. It's got that kind of trucker fit to it. As they break down, they sort of fall back. What I was looking for with a good old Brooklyn Dodgers cap, and this is the latest edition, I'm very excited that New Era has put out this figure 8B, and this is the low profile cap. This one's made in Vietnam. Most of the New Era caps are made in the USA, but I guess that I don't know, this is a new thing. Having low-crowned hats for New Era, breaking the tradition of their high-crowned 5950, is very unique and interesting, but it's also got that very hard front that New Era was known for back in the back when they became the official hat of Major League Baseball. And I think that was because it just holds that logo straight up in front rather than letting it just sag back and disappear on camera. So yeah, low profile caps. New Era brought these out early 2000s, kind of about the same time I believe they did the Cooperstown collection caps. Of course, the Cooperstown collection caps don't have any Buckram in them to hold up the front of the cap. New Era over time switched from using traditional Buckram to using, I guess it's a mix. It's Buckram, but if you go really close, and I've cut this open before, it's plastic threads going vertical, and they very much hold that crown up. It's just mainly plastic in there, threads, kind of like fishing line to hold that boosted up like a trucker cap. As I get off track here. But I'm very happy that they brought out this figure 8B, which you'll see. I dug up some pictures of Tommy Lasorda wearing this type of B, and then later when he, or earlier years, he's wearing this type of B. And if you look at pictures of Jackie Robinson, he's mainly got this type of B on his cap, and it's embroidered. But it wasn't considered low profile back then. It was before 1954 when most all caps had this low profile. What I am interested in and hoping New Era will do is will be releasing some of the 8-panel caps in the US that are throwback style. Also doing them with a bill that, and what I like too is that their current bill, actual bill, is literally more of the shape you'd find on vintage ball caps. The bill that they put out with their throwback caps is kind of more duckbill-ish, and not very much what you'd see in those vintage caps on field back in the 1920s and 30s. That's pretty much my spiel. Thank you for watching. One more quick point that I wanted to bring up with these caps was that early days of baseball, up until early 80s, they would have leather sweatbands in there, and they'd make it like a classic hat. There'd be a reading tape on the edge, and the reading tape would be white on the cap. So whenever you saw a baseball player turning his head, you'd see that white underneath. Nowadays, they don't put the reading tape between the sweatband and the exterior of the hat. So when you see the white, it's usually cotton peeking under. But back in the day, they had a kind of like a welt of a classic shoe. They'd have an extra piece of material between the outer part of the hat and the sweatband, and that would be that. It's called reading, and it would help the sewer put the hat sweatband into the hat. And I can go into that more on a future video.
No.
So a quick conclusion. The thing I think I like the low profiles. I really like the fact that they put them out. The thing I wish that they do more of, and I appreciate they did the 1920 edition, but the low profiles, the beauty of the low profile back in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and early days was that it was a skull cap fit. It just was straight to your skull. And thank you. And the new ones, being a 5950, they're just very, as I said before, plasticine, very plastic. And they'll completely hold their shape. It takes a long time to get character, and with that plastic in there, it just doesn't have the vintage feel that I kind of like, but I do love this cap. Last thing, as I talk about the caps. The older caps, nice and crushable, you can toss them in a bag, didn't care about them. I think the one thing, or fifth thing, I'm not quite keen on with the low profile New Era caps is the fact that I just cannot just toss it around. It's something you have to really take care of. You put it in your locker and it's just, whereas this I could toss into my duffel bag, gym bag. Think about the ball players back in the day where they'd have one cap, or they'd get issued another cap later because they weren't selling these everywhere. It was something that the team would buy, and they would have to take care of that cap. This one, yeah, you really have to take care of this cap. It's complicated. You can't just beat it up. This one, you can beat up a bit, and it will take it.